Hello everybody, welcome back to my series of recapping seasons of American Horror Story, the characters and timeline of every season. I can't take this thing seriously, one sec. Funny story, I was gonna use a Harry Potter wand for this season because it is Coven. That kind of fell through. So I'm just gonna use this again. Unfortunately, it doesn't match the vibe. Also, you may have noticed the characters this season are arranged in a very specific order. That order is an Abby Lee style pyramid. So every episode of this season, by the way, I am going to be ranking every single character that appears in the episode and giving reasons why they are there. Yes, everyone here slays besides these two. Quite literally everyone from her all the way to her slays. So the interchangeability of my favorite character this season, it's a mother factor. Every single character here is quite literally a mother. I would also like to preface that these tier lists, these pyramids, if you will, are not based on how good the person is, because these three people are quite literally terrible people. If you see me ranking an immoral racist above everybody else, just look away. So here we have the 12 main characters of this season. I do believe Gabri Sidibe and Angela Bassett are not credited as main characters, as well as Jamie Brewer. She's not credited as a main character, but they're in like every episode, so they have to be here. Plus, every one of these characters slays. I don't have any side characters on the bottom, and that is because literally everyone in this lineup is about all we have. We have a couple other characters that come in, but they are not nowhere near as prominent as these girls. Quite literally every single character, besides these two, are my favorite character. Like, I can't decide. There is no main character here. All of them are perfect. And it's not that these two don't do a good job, I just don't like the characters. These two actors, Evan Peters and Dennis O'Hare, have done amazing work outside of this season. Anyway, I don't think you guys understand, unless you've seen the season, the galactic level of slay and motherhood here on this board. This season is just so good with its characters. Like, every single character is great. But yeah, we're just gonna start from the order that I wrote it down, and then I'll get into my ranking and explain it at the end of every single episode. So up top here, the star of the season, the star of every season, let's be honest, is Miss Jessica Lange, this time playing a witch, Fiona Good. Now, one thing about Fiona Good, a Huntress, she is the leader of this coven, and one thing about this coven, they are dwindling down in numbers, perhaps, and we only have about 3 or 4 other witches there at any given time. All the other people are just like other actors that are in the story, but really the only witches that we have are Fiona, Cordelia, Madison, Queenie, Nan, and Zoe. Myrtle's also a witch. Oh, and Misty, but she's not really in the coven. She's just like an outsider. So back to Miss Fiona here. She invented slay. She invented slay. The outfits, the bags, the extensions, the makeup, everything. Invented slay. Invented fashion, let's just be honest. And we find out that she, because she's the leader, she's their like supreme is what they call it. She is a horrible supreme, perhaps. Anyway, moving down, we have Cordelia Good. Well, I guess Cordelia Fox is her name, but she is her daughter. Keywords I've written down for her is that she's protective, educational, very much a girl boss, even when she doubts her power. Because she's like the teacher. She's like the good instructor at this academy for witches, and Fiona just kind of goes off and does whatever she wants. But Cordelia here is like the role model they have, and she constantly tells them not to doubt themselves, but she is always doubting herself. She's very much giving like the teacher, not the doer, at first at least. So then we have Zoe Benson. Now, she, in the first episode, we are kind of led to believe that she is the main character, which could not be farther from the truth when you get into the thick of the season. But American Horror Story likes to do this thing where in the first episode of every single season, you think you know who the main character is, and then it does like a 180 and you don't actually know who it is, and then they change it up halfway through the season. She gives like the opening monologue. She's also a witch, and she's not at the academy yet, but her is a killer. I'm just gonna say that. She's a little boring, to be honest with you. She's a little plain Jane, and she loves a spell. This girl, she loves her little incantations, perhaps. Next, we have Madison Montgomery. Now, an absolute cuntress. I said Fiona was a cuntress. She is a cunt. Now, Madison here studies at Louisiana State University, majoring in cuntology. She is a stone cold bitch. Very much Hollywood cliche, giving very much D-list actor, perhaps. As terrible of a person as she is, like, the galactic level of slay is insane. Delphine Lalaurie. This is one of the most corny storylines in the whole season. Kathy Bates is just mother. If you've never heard of Madame Delphine Lalaurie, she is a slave owner in the 1830s, 1840s. She was very well known for being terrible to her servants. So then we have Myrtle Snow. She's just iconic. How could you not say cunt? You know what I mean? Like, she's the mother. She's literally the mother of the council. She's more of a mother to Cordelia than Fiona ever was, perhaps. So she's kind of like the head of the council, I guess, and they only come around when the witches are in big girl trouble, perhaps. Also, the hair They really put so much effort into how these characters look, but she is just, that's iconic. Like the hair, the glasses, the outfits, the accent that she's giving, the tone of voice. Like she's just, so she says long words in giant extravagant outfits, and yeah, that's all about I have to say about her. So then we have Kyle Spencer. Flop. I wrote down zombie, bland, and useless because he doesn't have any purpose here. And there's like a storyline where her fight over him, and it's juvenile. It didn't need to be here, to be honest. We have Spalding. All I have to say about him is he's a fucking weirdo. And then we have Marie Laveau. Yes, that Marie Laveau. So much like Madame Delphine Lalaurie is in this season, Marie Laveau is also in this season. And they are both kept alive by immortality in New Orleans around the 1800s. Mother, again, she eats every single time, no crumbs. The outfits are always iconic. The hair is iconic. Out of all the additions to the show, Kathy Bates and Angela Bassett this season, yeah, everybody moved. So then we have Queenie. She's a human voodoo doll, and she's very powerful. She's also kind of like the moral compass of this season. Like she's like the only person that's like a good person. There is a period of time where she is kind of like an awful person to like all these girls, but she tries to get Delphine to be a better person, and that does not go well for Miss Queenie. Now, I did accidentally cut the picture a little short, and we're not going to talk about it because it is a little uneven compared to everybody else. I think this is the season that she's in the most. She's just iconic. Next, we have Misty Day. Now, she is often imitating and listening to Stevie Nicks, which I just love. Like, this character is literally just Stevie Nicks as a witch. In fact, we'll get to Stevie Nicks later. She's giving hippie swamp rat girl, and that's just, what more could you want from Lily Rabe? So the first scene we get is December 1st, 1834. So we're going way back. Kathy Bates as Madame Delphine Lalaurie when she was a quite literal slave owner, terrible human being, which she kind of always is throughout the season. She imprisons a slave that her daughter tried to sleep with. So your daughter tried to rape someone and you enslaved them. And then we jump to the present day, so that would be October 10th, 2013. We have Zoe Benson and her boyfriend, who is not pictured, because again, he's a flop. He dies right away. They are messing around in her bedroom. This is when Miss Girl finds out she's a witch because she kills him with her pussy. Her mom sends her away to this academy, but she does not live anywhere near New Orleans at all. Miss Fiona Good, we are introduced to her. One thing about Miss Fiona, she's very much anti-aging. She hates the fact that she's getting older, and she is not afraid to let a doctor know about it. And the doctor says that the drug that he's like working on, like this miracle drug that he's invented, can't be used on humans for like another 2 years, but she demands it. So he gives her this drug and she goes on it for a couple weeks. So then we see Zoe getting sent to Miss Robichaud's academy, which is the academy where all the witches are, and she is welcomed by Madison, Queenie, and Nan dressed up in like clothes. They are pretending that they are in like a human sacrifice ritual. Then they're just like, we're just kidding, girl, we're kidding. And Zoe's like really freaked out. She's like, I want to go home. I don't want to be here anymore. In walks Cordelia Good, the teacher. She's like, girls, what are we doing? What are we doing? This is day 1. October 19th, 2013. Cordelia is their teacher and she gives Zoe a little history lesson about witches. While she gives this like history lesson, she's like, we have to stay hidden. If you don't be careful, you're gonna end up like Miss Misty Day. And they're like, well, who's Misty Day? She's like, Miss Misty Day was burned at the stake just a couple months ago. That being July 15th. July 15th, 2013, Misty Day is burnt at the stake. So then we see all the girls having dinner together and Madison is like, you should come to this party with me tomorrow. We see June 3rd, 2013, Madison kills a man while on the set of one of her movies. Now, Madison is an actress. She is like a D-list actress right here. So she's on the set of this movie and she accidentally, like quite literally throws a light at him using her mind. The light like hits him and then he dies. So for about a week now, Fiona has been using the doctor's medicine to help her reverse age. It's not working and he needs to do a better job. He's like, I can't give you any more, babes. It's already illegal to give you any and you're asking for more. And she's like, well, then you can just die. So she kills him. We then see Fiona returning to the academy because she hasn't been there in presumably years, basically, and has let Cordelia kind of do everything for the last few years. Cordelia is like, she hates her mother, by the way. Cordelia is like, leave me alone, mom. I don't want any part of you. So then we get a scene where Madison and Zoe go to this frat party and Zoe meets Kyle. These two are basically falling in love at first sight. It's giving very much Violet and Tate, let's just be honest. So at this party, Kyle's frat get Madison alone in a room, drug her, and then gang rape her. And then she goes outside and flips their bus with her mind and kills all of them. including Kyle. He like tries to like save her, and then all of them run away, go into the bus, and she flips the bus with her mind and kills all of them. Day 2, October 20th, 2013, the girls all meet Fiona, and by the girls, I mean Madison, Queenie, Nan, Zoe, all meet Fiona because she has returned to the academy to help Cordelia again. Fiona takes all the girls on a field trip. On their way, Nan, who is a mind reader, hears the thoughts of one Madame Delphine Lalaurie. Delphine has been cursed with immortality in the 1800s and was buried alive, and that is where Nan hears her because she can hear thoughts. So all the girls go to the historic Delphine house. At the end of the night, Fiona unearths her. We get a flashback learning that Delphine was buried alive December 7th, 1834 by Miss Marie Laveau here because she dismembered her boyfriend and turned him into a centaur. We see that Delphine is buried alive by Marie Laveau after being cursed with immortality. Later that day, we see Zoe go to the hospital where the last surviving frat boy is, and he's the only one that survived on that bus because everyone else died. She goes to this hospital, uses her pussy power to kill him, and that is where we leave episode 1. So now for my character ranking. Just like Abby Lee Miller, I'm going to go character by character, character by character, character by character, character. At the very top will be top of the pyramid. So down here, we have Mr. Spaulding. Now, Spaulding, boring. Didn't do anything this whole episode. We see him in one scene. I didn't even really explain. He's the butler for the coven. Next, I have Kyle. Also boring. Didn't do anything. Literally dies. Zoe. Also a little bit boring. We're supposed to support her as like the main character and like support her decisions or whatever. She doesn't really do anything. Then we have Nan with her little cunty bangs. Love her. She's so funny. So then we have Marie. She is in one scene this episode. So then we have Miss Misty Day. Now she, in her one little scene where she gets burned alive, is a legend as well. We love her. So then we have Myrtle. She has one scene this whole episode. And then we have Queenie, who basically eats up Madison. Every time these two are on screen, she just eats up Madison, and Madison like thinks she's on top of the argument and like the disagreement, but she eats up Madison every single time. So then we have Cordelia, not as cunty as everyone else in this first episode, but she's still mother. She's still definitely like giving. And then we have Delphine. Now, yes, I did put an immortal racist at number 3, but she is still Kathy Bates, and she still is a great performer. Don't know what to say. Then we have Madison, Huntress. And on the top of the pyramid is Fiona. Now on to episode 2. Episode 2 begins with Misty Day in the woods, and she is somehow resurrected. She has the power of resurgence, so she brought herself back to life and kills 2 hunters who are like killing alligators. One thing about her, she's a vegan girl. She loves animals. So she saves the alligators, brings them back to life, and kills the hunters. The next day, day 3, October 21st, 2013, Cordelia is trying to get everybody downstairs for a meeting, but we see Fiona upstairs, who's running late to this meeting because she is dealing with Delphine upstairs, just trying to get answers about how she's still alive. Police show up to the academy to question Madison and Zoe about the bus incident because both of them were seen leaving the scene, and Zoe was seen at the hospital and was the last one to see that guy alive that she killed. All of a sudden, Miss Zoe, because she has such a guilty conscience, just confesses to everything, and Cordelia's like, what are you doing? What's going on? And then Mother here walks in and is like, enough of this. You two are imbeciles. Get out. I will deal with this. She quite literally calls them fools and throws them against the wall, and it's like, I couldn't toast a piece of bread with the heat they were putting on you. She erases the memories of the police officers, and this girl is horrified of Miss Supreme over here. These two then go to the morgue where Kyle is, use a spell to turn him into a zombie / Frankenstein. It's a whole thing. They bring him back to life using the body parts of like all these boys, so he ends up with like tattoos everywhere that he never used to have. One thing about him, he doesn't have any memory really of what's going on. He actually is unable to speak this whole season basically, and so they use a spell to bring him back to life. A security guard shows up and he kills him. Cordelia, we see, is having some fertility issues with her husband, and she says that she refuses to use magic to get what she wants because that makes her just like her mother, who uses quite literally magic to do whatever she wants. Fiona goes over to a hair salon to confront Marie Laveau, and she is immortal as well as her. They have a mother off here at this salon. Threats are made. These two do not like each other because she is queen of the voodoos and she is the queen of the witches. A race war has begun. In this episode, we also see Queenie and Nan find Delphine upstairs and they set her free and she just goes walking in town. Cordelia and Hank, who's not pictured, that's her boyfriend, try a fertility spell that doesn't end up working. She stoops down to her mother's level. So then we see Zoe take Kyle to Misty's house because Misty heard Kyle's soul calling out to her. Misty's like, just bring him to my place, I'll get him all fixed up. Day 4, the next day, October 22nd, Fiona finds Delphine at her former place of residence. So that's where we leave episode 2. Not a whole lot happens this episode. It's mainly centered around these two resurrecting Kyle. He's still on the bottom. He's still here because he's a zombie. She's just like obsessed with him and it's like really sad because like she could have had a whole other character. Queenie is moved down because she doesn't really do a whole lot this episode. Same with Nan. Then we have Misty. Cordelia, I feel bad for her because she can't get pregnant. So then we have Delphine, who's just really funny this episode. I like the last scene of her. Marie. Her outfits, absolutely eating. The confrontation with Fiona. Then we have Madison. She hasn't quite gotten to number 1 yet, but she will at some point. I can't help but love her. And at the top of the pyramid, again, Fiona. Alright, so episode 3 begins where Fiona wakes up in the middle of the night and we can see she's very tired looking, very sickly looking. She has like a little flashback to May 2nd, 1971. It is revealed kills the reigning supreme at the time, but that's how she basically got the job, is she killed the last one. So we jump down to day 9, October 27th, has a consultation with this like facial surgeon that is promising her like a new face. Zoe meets with Kyle's mother, who has not been taking his death very well. We get a scene where Nan, Queenie, and Madison watch the new neighbors move in next door. Queenie and Madison, you can already tell, are infatuated by this man who is just moving in next door with his mom. We see Fiona telling Delphine that she needs to become the new housemaid and do whatever Queenie asks and be her like personal slave, I guess. We see it's been a couple days. Kyle is still living with Misty and she is getting him all fixed up with her Louisiana mud, putting it all over his like scars because he was quite literally sewn together. So then Zoe shows up and takes Kyle away from Misty and she's like, but we were having so much fun. He needs to be with his mom. Like, his mom's sad. She misses him. She takes Kyle to his mom's. Day 10, October 28th, 2013, so the next day, we see Madison, Nan go over to meet Luke, the new neighbor. We can see that Nan has feelings for him, but Madison just, like, wants to get in his pants, basically. And the very religious mother of this man walks in the door and is like,
My, what are you guys doing here?
She is dressed so scandalously for this Christian mother. So in response to this, Madison here sets the boys' curtains ablaze. And the mom is like, you conjured the devil. So Cordelia sees her doctor and is told that she cannot bear children. Joan, the neighbor lady that's like Christian, comes over to talk to Fiona and banishes Madison from ever coming over to the house. Day 12, October 30th, the day before Halloween, keep in mind, Cordelia meets with Marie for like a fertility spell. Marie refuses to do it because her mother quite literally threatened her in the last episode. And Cordelia is like, when did my mother come over here? She broke the treaty. Girl, you're doing the same fucking thing right now. Don't even lie. Fiona sees that Madison is a very powerful witch. So she takes her under her wing and they go out like clubbing all night. We see Marie use her Minotaur boyfriend and sends him over to the Robichaux Academy to kill all the witches because she wants war. We have a scene where Queenie tries to sleep with this Minotaur and it does not end well. She gets attacked by this thing. Fiona has to kill it and send him on his merry little way back to Marie Laveau. We then get a scene where Fiona returns home with Madison and she's like, I know who you are. You're the next Supreme. Have you noticed your powers getting stronger? Every bit of that is coming from me. And Madison, she doesn't really know how to react to this. And then she begs her to kill her. This just ends with Fiona killing Madison. Instead, that's basically where we leave episode 3. She's like, this coven doesn't need a new Supreme. It needs a new rug. Spalding walks in the room and sees all this happen. He takes care of her. But yeah, that's basically where we leave episode 3. Okay, so everybody basically stays the same this episode. The only differences are these these three all kind of switch positions. So Misty was right here and Delphine was right here. So I think those are the only two that switch. These three are my least favorite still. She doesn't have a whole lot to do this episode. She, again, doesn't have a whole ton to do, but I'm happy for her that she's getting her little boyfriend, perhaps. And Marie, again, just absolute slay. Madison, again, mother. And again, at the top of the pyramid is Fiona. On to episode 4 and 5. It's not necessarily a two-part episode, but they function as a two-part episode. And usually this 4th and 5th episodes of every season, at least in the first few seasons, are two-parters. So I'm gonna do 4 and 5 together as if they were one episode because they essentially are. In 1961, we get a flashback on September 4th when a young boy is lynched in Louisiana, and Marie Laveau knows the woman that is the mother of the boy. We find out that the police did it and let it happen. This causes her to kill the men who did it. We see as the end of the last episode, the same day, day 12, October 30th, the day before Halloween, Spalding takes Madison, who is not on the board anymore because she's not in this episode and she's dead, up to his room and keeps her as his living doll. Cordelia and Fiona save Queenie after she was attacked by the Minotaur in the last episode. This causes the witches to go to war with the Voodoos again. On Halloween, day 13, Zoe returns to check on Kyle and his mom, and we find out that Kyle has killed his mom because his mom was disgusting, by the way. Giving kind of rapey vibes, to be honest, to him. Was like touching him and like watching him in the shower. Disgusting. So he killed his mom out of rage. Zoe comes, takes him again. We learn that in 1962, a war between the White Witches of the Academy and Marie Laveau broke out for a period of 10 years. The conflict is resolved by Annalee Layton, who was the Supreme before Fiona, and Marie Laveau, who signed a treaty. We then see Hank, who is Cordelia's husband, at a, quote, business trip, but he's really cheating on her with this girl, Kaylee. They have sex in this hotel room, and then he kills her. This is when we learn that Hank is not necessarily a good person, perhaps, and we'll learn more about that within the next few episodes. So then the council shows up. Nan called the council because she can no longer hear Madison's life force. Myrtle right away accuses Fiona of killing Madison. These two have a very long history, and we're gonna get into that. On May 2nd, 1971, as we've seen, Fiona already killed Annalee Layton that same day. Little later on, the council is called. They get the whole story from Fiona, and Fiona says that she just ran off, basically, and the council just believes her. Meanwhile, Myrtle watches the next day on May 3rd, 1971, as Fiona has passed the test of the 7 wonders, which we will get into what that means later on, been appointed the next Supreme, and Myrtle is not buying a single bit of this. She basically accuses Fiona of killing Miss Annalee. She could see right through it all right from the beginning, Miss Myrtle. She puts a spell on Spalding's tongue to make it so that he can't ever tell a lie. This forces him to cut out his own tongue because he is in love with Fiona. Disgusting, creepy, gross. I don't know if I mentioned, but he's mute. In the present day, this is why. Because he cut out his own tongue to protect Fiona. If anyone knows who killed Annalee, it would be him because he's so close to Fiona. And Myrtle, obviously, she has a few tricks up her sleeve, but this one didn't go according to plan because he had a plan of his own and it backfired on her. Again, with the help of Spalding, in the present day, Fiona is proven innocent here. We see Marie using a spell to raise people from the dead and turn them into zombies and send them to the witch's doorstep to kill every single one of them, including Delphine's daughters. We see in their celebration, Fiona and Cordelia go out for drinks, and they're actually having like a good time, surprisingly, because she hates her and she's like not a good mother to her. Cordelia goes to the bathroom and suddenly is attacked with acid by a masked assailant. Now, Cordelia here loses the ability to see. This whole thing causes Fiona to go on the warpath to figure out who did this to her daughter, perhaps. We get a flashback to Halloween 1833. Delphine locks her daughters up for conspiring to kill her. We move back to the present day. All the zombies have arrived to the academy. Zoe, Queenie, Nan, and Delphine and Spalding are like the only ones home at the time. They are just waiting for these zombies to come in and attack them, basically. Delphine recognizes that 3 of them are her daughters, and she is hysterical at this point. And Queenie basically is just like, girl, get over yourself. I will deal with it. Nan and her boyfriend get attacked by these zombies. Zoe ends up taking a chainsaw and killing most of them off in like a pretty badass moment for her, not gonna lie. She kind of slayed just a little too hard on that. We see Hank, which is Cordelia's husband, return to New Orleans. He goes to the hospital to comfort her because he found out that she got blinded. She, all of a sudden, like as he touches her to like comfort her, has like a vision, which is like a new power for her. So she has like the second sight now that she's gone blind. Now that she is blind, can finally truly see that her husband is a horrible person. From now on, she is just not gonna give that man a break, and deservedly so. He's crusty. So then the next day, Fiona returns to the coven and sees that there are zombies all over the lawn. Nan, Zoe are cleaning up the whole mess. Fiona is like, thanks Zoe, you've done a great service to this coven, it won't be forgotten. The council shows up again, Myrtle Snow shows up again, this time to talk about the acid attack on Cordelia. And Miss Girl's like, I didn't do that. I'm her mother. Why would I attack my own daughter? She still believes that it was her, so she's put on trial yet again. And with the help of Queenie, the council comes to the conclusion that it must have been her. Because Queenie is a human voodoo doll, she uses her own hand, puts it in acid and burns it to make it look like Myrtle was handling the acid that burned Cordelia's eyes, which makes her look guilty. Council has come to the decision that Myrtle will be burned at the stake. Day 14, November 1st. She's burnt at the stake. That's really where we leave off episodes 4 and 5. All right, so over here on the character side, not much really changed. A little bit did. Queen Bee has been dethroned. But starting down here, again, these 2 flops still on the bottom. She doesn't have a whole lot to do this episode besides like get injured. So like points were deducted, perhaps. Being seen as the villain, love her still, but why is she raising all the dead to try and kill these girlies? Like, and then she doesn't have a whole lot to do this episode, so she's down on the bottom row, unfortunately. Nan and Zoe have been promoted up to the middle row because they absolutely slew. Delphine is here, again, still kind of in the middle, like, and then we have Cordelia, like, absolutely slay this episode. Fiona, yes, she has been dethroned because Myrtle is the star of these 2 episodes, perhaps. She slays, she serves, she died, unfortunately. The episode opens with the witches of the Academy in 1919, September 15th, killing the Axeman, serial killer that's terrorizing New Orleans. However, I did not include him here because I didn't want any side characters that weren't in at least most of the episodes, and I think he's in like 4 or 5. Day 15, November 2nd, 2013, we see Zoe finding a spirit board, and Queenie is very apprehensive against this thing. She's like, let's not use it, please, no. And Zoe's like, why not? We need to find out what happened to Madison. So they use one to get information about Madison, but then end up contacting the Axeman instead, who is trapped in this house as a ghost. So then we see Fiona getting treatment for her sickness that she's been having the last couple episodes. It's revealed that it's cancer. The Axeman helps Zoe find Madison's body, which is in Spalding's room dressed up as a doll. Spalding is just so disappointing. I hate this man so much. This man is crusty. So then the next day, day 16, November 3rd, 2013, Cordelia finally comes home from the hospital with Hank, and she is just reading this man to filth. She is reading this man to filth. The world is healing because Cordelia is giving this man everything he deserves. She basically tells him to leave and that she doesn't need his help. And Fiona here is like, I would leave while you still can. Cordelia then sees a vision when she touches her mom that Miss Myrtle Snow, our dearly departed, was burned at the stake in the last episode, and Cordelia's like, why didn't you tell me? And Fiona's like, you were so distraught from literally being blinded that you wouldn't believe me if I told you that she was the one that did it. Misty gets the body of Myrtle, nurses her back to health. I think we get like 1 scene. She's literally just like buried in the Louisiana mud to like regenerate her after being literally burned. So then during this, we see Kyle finding Misty. She's like, oh, you've come back. Perfect. She is just listening to her Stevie Nicks, trying trying to give this guy a bath because he's really dirty after he killed his own mother. She's like, why are you going all crazy on me, Kyle? So Kyle literally destroys Misty's radio, so she can't listen to Stevie Nicks anymore. Zoe arrives and brings Kyle back to the academy with her, as well as Misty, to help resurrect Madison. They then do that. Madison is resurrected, and she absolutely eats this resurrection scene. She's like, I need a cigarette. We get a scene where Hank, who is again not pictured, visits Marie, and we find out that they are in cahoots with each other, and that Hank is a witch hunter hired by Miss Marie to kill all the witches. Oh my goodness. He literally married Cordelia like a decade ago and has just been like with her this whole time, pretending he's not there to kill her. And he's like gathering intel and stuff for her. We also learned that the girl that he slept with in that hotel room was indeed a witch, and that's why he killed her, because his whole purpose in life is to rid the world of witches. So then we see the Axeman attacking Cordelia, the ghost of the Axeman attacking a blinded Cordelia. So she sets him free because they had a deal where if the Axeman showed Zoe where Madison's body was, Zoe was supposed to set him free, and she didn't do that. So the Axeman is now angry and attacking Cordelia, who again is blind and like unable to defend herself. So Zoe sets him free, while at the bar, Fiona meets this man who is no longer a ghost. He doesn't really do a whole lot this episode. Still, gross. Don't like him at all. Kyle, again, awful. Why? It's not that serious, girl. I really don't think he's moving from this position at all. I don't think these two are going to move at all. We have Nan and Queenie, who aren't in this episode very much, so I'm putting them here and here. And then we have Zoe. Clearly, we're meant to think that she's like the next Supreme because she has all this power and she's like killing all these zombies, freeing the Axeman, who's a spirit there, after only being here at this point for like 2 weeks. So we're meant to think that she's like the next Supreme. Then we have Delphine, kind of MIA this episode. I know she has a couple scenes. Marie, who teams up with Hank in this episode. She slays. Don't like him though. Misty, who again is not in this episode a whole lot. Madison, she's at number 3 because she absolutely devoured, or I guess undevoured, those bugs during that scene. So then we have Cordelia, who jumps up to number 2 because she absolutely slays this entire episode. The chewing alive her husband, eating him alive perhaps. And again, on the top of the pyramid is Fiona. Episode 7 begins with a flashback in Kyle's life. We see it is September 13th, 2013, so just about a month before the series begins. We see Kyle's frat brothers getting tattooed at this tattoo shop. However, Kyle refrains from getting one. It's just like a little flashback to show that he now has these tattoos on his body because his frat brothers' body parts were sewn onto his torso. That's why he has all these random tattoos on him now. It's day 17, so November 4th, 2013. We see Fiona staying the night at the Axeman's house. He's free to roam. He's basically as good as alive now. Fiona obviously does not know that he was a ghost in the academy that she grew up in and lived in for a long time. So she just thinks he's some random guy, so she spends the night at his house. Long story short, the Axeman took someone's house and then killed the person that's living there. Fiona finds the body in the bathtub and is like, the body in the bathtub? I don't know about it. I'm gonna go. And then he basically persuades her to stay, so she stays the night at his house. We jump to the next day, which is day 18, November 5th. We see early on in the morning, Zoe trying to kill Kyle for still causing a ruckus, but she doesn't do it, unfortunately. And Kyle is still a pest on this season, to be honest. He just drags everybody down, I feel like. He does not need to be here, and the events that ensue with him and Madison and Zoe, I'm just like, this is filler. Delphine and Queenie have become like besties since the whole zombie attack. They have like a conversation about how Queenie will never be accepted in the coven for real because the witches here are white and she is black. And Queenie's like, I can see I'm getting through to you. And she's like, well, maybe you are, maybe you are. So since the last episode, we catch up with Madison and she has had to try to stay hidden from Cordelia, which isn't too hard because Cordelia is blind. So she accidentally bumps into her and Cordelia finds out that she is, not only that she is alive and that she was brought back, but that Fiona was the one that killed Madison. We then get a scene where Madison sleeps with Kyle and Zoe walks in on it. And then Madison is like, we can share him if you want. Like, we can both have him if you want. Girl, bye. Queenie goes over and meets with Marie Laveau, and Marie Laveau recruits Queenie. And this is when Queenie becomes a little bit of a backstabber, a little bit of a traitor, a little bit of a two-time bitch. Cordelia meets with Zoe and tells her her plan to kill her mother, because her mother quite literally did a disservice to the coven by killing one of its own witches. She says that they need to perform the sacred taking on Fiona, and we'll get into that into the next episode. That's a big plot point of the next episode. We get a very long and drawn out scene of Fiona and the Axeman at the Axeman's house that he's staying at, where he reveals that he watched Fiona grow up. He was obviously in the house when she was a student there. Kind of creeps her out because she's like, you groomed me. That's grooming. That's disgusting, to be honest. Like, you literally watched me from when I was a child. We then see Zoe finally fucking kill Spalding for his behavior with Madison, and he becomes a ghost in the house. We see him a couple times, but girl, I'm just fucking glad he's gone, because he's just so useless in the story. If only Kyle dies at this episode, it would have been sunshine from here on out. We get a flashback to September 30th, 1833, where Delphine reveals to Queenie that on that day, Delphine killed her servant's son when she finds out that her own husband is the actual real father. And Queenie's like, you don't deserve forgiveness anymore. So Queenie takes Delphine to Marie Laveau, where in the next few episodes, we'll see how this interaction, this reunion perhaps goes, and it doesn't go over smoothly. Queenie has finally changed sides, perhaps, to Marie Laveau. Okay, so we're not going to talk about this and the lack of characters up here. Basically, Spalding is finally dead, so thank God he's gonna be off this fucking ranking. Kyle, still the worst, still hate him so much. Zoe is just so dramatic over the whole Madison situation. Like, girl. Queenie, again, you switch sides, you piss me off. Then we have her, because I still love Kathy Bates. She slays. The hair salon, everything still slays this episode. But I do question the fact that she doesn't want to somehow team up with the witches, because there is witch hunters abound. Fiona drops down a few couple points because she does a good job, obviously, as always, but the extended scenes with the Axeman, I'm just like, girl, move on. I don't really care about that storyline, to be honest with you. And then we have Cordelia, as always. She's just always right below the place that she needs to be at the very top. Because Cordelia, let's just be honest, this episode, serving Jenna Marshall. I'm sorry to make such a reference, but she's iconic. The opening monologue of this episode, or I think it's one of the middle monologues, a star. Let's be honest, a star. I ate that shit up when I was like 13 and watching this show for the first time. That brings us to episode 8. We move to day 22, November 9th, 2013. We see Zoe and Madison confronting Queenie after she joined Marie Laveau in the last episode. You wouldn't understand me. I'm voodoo now. They're like, we need all the witches we can, because Fiona's evil. Like, we need to take her down. And Queenie's like, girl, we're gonna take all you down. Fiona's cancer is progressing at a very rapid rate. She does not look so good lately. She's losing her hair at a rapid rate. We see her again with the Axeman. She is saying that she is going to kill every single witch that she can in order to feel healthy again. Then we move on to day 26, so a few days later, November 13th. Oh God, I hate this storyline. We see the next door neighbor, the Christian one, trying to cleanse her son from the inside out. Disgusting. Misty returns to the coven with none other than Myrtle Snow. Was obviously brought back to life by Misty. This causes Myrtle to believe that Misty is the next Supreme. So Myrtle's like, behold, next Supreme. She said it just like that too. Anyway, Misty returns and says that she was attacked for like someone trying to shoot up her house. The witches here all perform the sacred taking on Fiona. And this is like an extended scene where Fiona, she's not looking too good. With the help of Madison and Myrtle, she swallows a bunch of pills because Madison, who is alive, reveals herself to Fiona that she survived. She came back because she's the next Supreme. Obviously all lies, and Madison isn't the next Supreme. It gets Fiona to swallow the pills with also the help of Myrtle. And then we have the ghost of Spalding who shows up. I'm really not gonna put his picture back on here because I really don't care. He shows up and convinces her to throw them up. Murray here cuts off the hand of Delphine. Nan goes over to the neighbor's house to try and save her crush Luke. This doesn't end very well because witch hunters find them. The witch hunter kills Joan, the mom. After this, Misty goes over to the house because there's like police everywhere. She finds Joan and brings her back to life. And at this point, there's no question in anybody's mind. Miss Girl is the next Supreme. She's now brought back 1, 2, and now 3 people from the dead, basically within a span of like a month, not even that. So including herself also, so that'd be 4. Okay, so I'm pretty sure the only 2 that changed were Queenie and Zoe. Zoe moving up because she is not a traitor like Queenie is, and she's a little less insufferable this episode, but she still doesn't, I feel like she doesn't have anything to do besides him. He's irrelevant, move on. Like, no one wants him. But basically everybody kind of stays in their spot that they were in the last episode on to episode 9. Episode 9 begins October 1st, 1991. We see a flashback where Hank is on a camping trip with his dad. He fails to kill a witch out in the woods or something, and the dad has to kill her himself, and the dad ends up getting pretty burnt by this incident. We jump down to day 27. So the same day as the last episode, we see Fiona talking terms with Marie Laveau about them banding together because there are witch hunters now. Fiona is right for this. Queen here denies this proposal and says that she doesn't need her help anyway, and that it's useless. We see the head, I think in the last episode I forgot to mention, she was brought back to Fiona. So Fiona brought her head back to Marie while negotiating terms and just leaves her there again. Hank meets with his dad, who is like the owner of this gigantic company called the Delphi Trust. They are basically all witch hunters disguised as Wall Street men. Hank has been there for like 10 or 15 years, soaking up information and not killing a single witch. And it's revealed that he had to marry Cordelia in order to get more information. I think I already explained this whole situation. Anyway, moving on. We get the next day. It is day 28, November 15th, 2013. Myrtle, we get an iconic scene where Myrtle takes the eyes of both of the other council members, like with a melon baller, like literally melon balls their eyeballs out of their heads and gives them to Cordelia and restores her eyesight. We learn that Cordelia through this has lost the power of sight. She regained her actual vision, but lost her power of sight and can't see the future or the past anymore, unfortunately. Nan helps her boyfriend's mom in the hospital talk to her son as he's like in a coma or something. But eventually Joan kills him once he accuses her of killing his dad. Queenie forces Delphine to watch Roots. Miss Girl here keeps her ears and her eyes closed for all of it. But then when the song plays, she actually opens her eyes and listens. Guys, she starts crying. Ooh, character development, character development. We see Cordelia tell her husband to basically fuck off. Fiona partially restores Kyle from being a zombie. This storyline is just so useless. Get rid of him. Hank goes to Marie Laveau's work, the 9th Ward, that like hair salon, slaughters the entire salon as a way to like prove to his father that he is actually tough shit or something. Oh, also to prove to Cordelia that he'll do anything to protect her or something. The male ego, he ends up getting killed by Queenie. The only 2 that survive this whole situation are Queenie and Marie Laveau. Oh, also Delphine is upstairs, but she goes to Fiona asking for help. Her coven was basically killed. Like all her family and friends were killed. A little bit of changes on the board. Marie has gone down to the bottom row. She put her faith in a witch hunter, so that knocked her down. These 3 still kind of not slaying that much. Nan has her side story this episode. Misty, she's still serving, so she's still here. Madison kind of pisses me off because she's just in the background and she's not doing a whole lot. Powerful scenes with Kathy Bates. One of the main stars is always going to be Fiona. She's always going to be in like the top 3 or 4. This episode is more about Cordelia regaining her eyesight and the emotional moment with Kathy Bates, Marie Laveau's whole coven getting slaughtered. And at number 1, because of the scene with the melon baller, is Miss Myrtle Snow. That is episode 9. I'm gonna take a break for a couple days and I'll come back and film the last few episodes. I'm exhausted, to be honest, so I will see you guys in a few days for the next part of the video. So episode 10 begins on day 29, November 16th, 2013. We see Marie Laveau, who is taken under the wing by Fiona and the coven at the Miss Robichaud's Academy. She is awoken by Papa Legba. Now, Papa Legba in this show is iconic, let's just be honest. He serves. We find out that Marie has a deal with Papa where every year, once a year, she brings a baby to him as a form of sacrifice to keep her looking young again. But she does go to the orphanage and steal the baby. So all that takes place very early in the morning. So later on that morning, when the sun comes up, Cordelia, Fiona, and Marie are having a little chat where Marie basically reveals to Cordelia and Fiona that she was the one that hired Hank to kill all the witches. And Miss Fiona, this is big drama because Fiona obviously never trusted Hank from the beginning and is not shy to let her feelings come out about Cordelia's husband, ex-husband, I guess. And Cordelia obviously beating herself up about this because she brought witch hunters into the academy. Fiona is not gonna not let her know how she feels about it either, so she slaps her. We have another scene where Fiona goes to Misty and brings her downstairs for a little surprise. And this surprise is none other than Stevie Nicks herself. She is here for a musical performance for Misty because Misty at this time is assumed to be the next Supreme. Fiona is like, well, I might as well give her a little treat, little something to hang on to before I kill everybody, basically. Misty here is just completely starstruck by Miss Stevie Nicks. In walks the rest of the witches. The amazing line by Madison, I'm a big fan of Eminem. When's he getting here? And then Fiona says, oh, Marshall, you're not his type. So Cordelia does some research into this Delphi trust that her husband was heir to and finds out that Hank's father is like a really prominent witch hunter. And with obviously Marie Laveau and her mother's help, they completely like destroy the entire Delphi Trust company within hours because of a spell that they do. Day 30, which is November 17th, 2013, we see Madison and Misty going to a funeral. For some reason, they're just at a funeral. And we see her like dancing around in Stevie Nicks's shawl, I believe it's called, or like scarf that she gave her. Madison's like, you do know that that wasn't like special. She probably does that for every biggest fan of hers. This leads to Madison quite literally hitting Misty over the head with a brick and burying her in the cemetery. We get a scene where Nan goes over to Joan's house with, I believe, Zoe as well. Nan is pissed that Luke is dead, and she finds out through her visions that it was Joan that killed Luke. Nan quite literally kills Miss Joan for this offense. Oh my goodness. We get a really long scene where Fiona conjures Papa Legba because she learns through Marie that that is how she's able to be immortal and how she was able to stay young for so many years. So Fiona wants this because she, obviously this whole season has been trying to prevent her own death. A deal cannot be made between her and Papa Legba because she does not have a soul, according to Papa Legba, so she doesn't have anything to sell to him. When a demon of the underworld quite literally tells you that you don't have a soul, oh, it's bad. It's bad for Fiona. It's bad. She can't even go to the devil. So then the next day, day 31, November 18th, 2013, we see Fiona and Marie teaming together to kill Nan in the bathtub because they learn that she is coming into her own power, and their plan is to get rid of all the witches so that it can just be these two left at the end of it. Okay, so we're not going to talk about the way that these are all crooked and the fact that it's so low. The flops down here, quite literally, I think this is the shortest pyramid that we have. There's not much that happens in this episode and not many characters that appear, like literally like 4. So I said it was Misty's episode and it very much is, but Madison, the scene in the graveyard is just too iconic. I can't, she is just the star here. You can get mad at me in the comments if you want. I've stuck Misty here because Fiona, these two working together, what more could you want? They're so sinister and evil together. It's perfect. So Misty, I stuck in between them. I couldn't decide where she belonged. Episode 11 begins with the oldest flashback that we have, the first event in the timeline. We see Delphine in 1830, March 30th to be exact. She moves back to New Orleans after being in France for a few years. We can see that this is when she begins her obsession with torturing. So we move down to day 32, November 19th. We see the coven all having a funeral for Nan, who slipped in the tub, according to Fiona and Marie, who witnessed it apparently. apparently. We see Queenie and Delphine return this episode after being absent the last episode. By the way, this funeral scene slays. This is like the most cast I think we have in one scene this entire season. Everyone's outfit here slays. Everyone's hair here slays. It's iconic. And the fact that they're in a cemetery, iconic. So we move down to 2 days later. Delphine has again become the maid for everybody here. Her head has been returned to her body. I don't know if I mentioned that, but Queenie put it back on after they survived the massacre. Delphine is giving a little monologue about how she hates having to pick up after everybody. And we see that she's telling this to someone that she has tied up. James the gardener, perhaps. He is tied up. She is about to cut off his little toes. We see Zoe finding out via spell that Fiona and Marie are the ones that were behind Nan's death. Her and Madison end up fighting over Kyle in this scene because this fucking storyline is just getting so old and annoying. Obviously, Kyle doesn't want to be with Madison. He wants to be with Zoe. Zoe wants to be with Kyle, but Madison claims she's the next Supreme because now that Misty's dead, there's no one else around who will fill the spot. And Zoe's like, you already died. You can't be the Supreme girl. Oh my gosh. Spalding, the ghost of Spalding returns again. He basically talks to getting a really old doll for him. In exchange, he'll give her something to poison Marie Laveau with. It's really just like Benadryl or something. Oh my goodness. We get an amazing scene. Cordelia blinds herself with gardening shears in order to regain her second sight. Because one thing about Cordelia, she is not feeling it lately. She's like, my powers, they're gone. I'm not giving anything to this coven. Myrtle is just playing the theremin. So after this, Cordelia obviously decides that the only thing she can do about it is to gouge out her own eyes. So she does that, and she goes blind again for the second time. Myrtle tells Zoe and Kyle to run away. Fiona and Marie go to the Delphi Trust and kill every single one of its board members along with the Axeman. These two are my favorite duo this entire show has ever had, perhaps. Delphine drugs Marie and pushes her down a flight of stairs, and Spalding is like, I just wanted her out of my hair. Okay, again, we're not going to speak on the symmetry of the board, the ranking. We're not going to speak on it. But basically, yes, I did move Madison down to the bottom because this episode, this is one of the worst parts of the season. I don't care about the love triangle. I really don't. Like, Madison serves cunt on her own, and these two are so boring. I don't make the rules. Like, you can't compete where you don't compare. Also, Queenie doesn't really do a whole lot, and I'm still a little salty at you for abandoning everybody. So then I have Myrtle here because, girl, she was serving with that theremin. Cordelia gouging out her own eyes. Killing all the board members. I would put her higher if this wasn't such a slay as well. Did she kill a bunch of people in this episode? Yes. The monologue is still iconic. I can't deny Kathy Bates is just such a good actress. And then on top, obviously, we have Fiona. Fiona declares that in 2 days' time, all the witches are going to be taking, at least all the students are going to be taking the test of the 7 wonders to determine Fiona's replacement. We see a scene where Queenie attempts Descentium, one of the tests, herself, and that is basically when you take your descent into hell and try to escape back to the real world on your own. And she is able to do this. We see her in her own personal hell. She's able to have a meeting with Papa Legba when she gets back and learns that Marie Laveau has sadly passed on due to Delphine. We see Queenie going to find Delphine. She's assumed the host position at her old house and is giving tours to people. She's giving tours and she reveals to Queenie that she killed the lady there. This leads to Queenie killing Delphine. They have to share a personal hell in which Marie is torturing Delphine. We see a scene where Fiona gives Cordelia a family heirloom. Cordelia, when she touches Fiona's hand, realizes that Fiona is saying goodbye to Cordelia because she can obviously see again, like she has the power of sight again, babes. So she is like, you're saying goodbye? Cordelia sees a future in which Fiona has killed every witch. So this leads Cordelia to not trust Fiona. Because of this, Cordelia meets up with the Axeman and tells him her plan to run away to Paris, I believe it is, and leave him behind. And he's like, she wouldn't do that. She's in love with me. And then Cordelia literally shows him the tickets. We see that night Cordelia using her sight to find where Misty is buried, and her and Queenie go and resurrect her, so points for Queenie on that. She is brought back to the house. So a bunch of people return in this. So Zoe and Kyle return to the house in this scene where Madison and Myrtle are talking about the disappearance of Misty Day. Now, what Madison doesn't know is that Misty Day is coming back, and Madison's like, oh. So Misty comes back to the house at the same time as these two. Girl is beating her ass. Misty here is throwing her against the wall and throwing her against pillars and smacking her ass around, her little scrawny ass around, and it's just so fun to see Madison get what she deserves. During all this, the Axeman just runs in. The Axeman just runs in with blood all over him. He tries to kill them. All the witches are like, oh girl, boy, did you step in the wrong house. So Cordelia uses her power of sight to find out whose blood it is that's all over him and all over the axe. And it is revealed that the blood that Cordelia touches is that of Fiona's. Everybody's shook. Everybody moves. You killed our fucking Supreme, bitch. So they all kill him. He is again slaughtered by all the witches at this academy, just like he was in 1918, which is just, that's a slay right there. All right, so here is the character ranking for the penultimate episode. I think all 4 of these are all still on the bottom, although I really like the beginning of the episode where we get a whole Queenie segment. And so I put these 2 here because they don't do a whole ton this episode besides both die and go to hell. So Myrtle here because she's not doing a whole ton. She's still serving. And then Misty here because she returns and she kicks some ass and she is fighting. And then Cordelia here because she has the scene where she finds the blood, and that's iconic. Like, girl, yes. And then up here because the final monologue is just so good, you have Fiona. So we finally made it to the finale of Coven. It opens with basically a music video for The Seven Wonders by Stevie Nicks, which is just iconic. The whole premise of this episode is to figure out who the next Supreme is. Misty, will it be Madison, will it be Queenie, or will it be Zoe? Day 36, November 23rd, the Coven has their Last Supper, and I'm referring to a specific shot that looks like the Last Supper, and it's just iconic. So day 37, we see November 24th, Misty, Madison, Queenie, and Zoe, all 4 girls, pass telekinesis and concilium, and then they all undergo dissension. During this, we get to see a little bit of Queenie's personal hell. We see a lot of Misty's, which is her stuck in a classroom where she has to continuously dissect frogs. Girl actually fails to come out of hell, and she is the only one that fails. These 3 succeed, but she ends up getting stuck there and dies. And this makes Cordelia very upset, so upset in fact that she stops the test of the Seven Wonders for 1 day. And she's right for that. Misty is just so iconic. It's so sad that she dies. Day 38, it is November 25th, the continuation of the trials of Zoe, Madison, and Queenie. The next one is transmutation, which is literally just like teleportation. They just have a fancy name for it. Anyway, all of them pass until Zoe ends up dead on top of the gigantic fence outside because they're like playing a game of tag, basically. She ends up teleporting herself up to the gigantic fence and stabbing herself. She ends up dying, which disqualifies her, obviously. And so all that's left at this point is Madison and Queenie. And not that those are bad options. One of the last tests they partake in is Batalum Batalis, which is the ability to revive someone from the dead. And Queenie fails this, trying to revive Zoe. Even though we've seen her do it before, it's just plot convenience. Anyway, Madison passes by resurrecting a fly. She is power moves only, Miss Girl Madison here. She's like, oh, you want me to pass the test? Let me just resurrect a fly. And then storms off because she realizes that she is the next Supreme, and if these 2 girlies aren't going to do anything about it, she's just going to run off. Myrtle then suggests that maybe Cordelia could be the next Supreme, and Cordelia's like, I never thought about that, actually. The next day, day 39, it's November 26th, by the way, we see Zoe is resurrected by Cordelia, and with this, Cordelia has passed every single one of the 7 wonders that we see throughout this scene. Her eyesight is brought back because the hallmark of a rising Supreme is radiant health. It's only fitting that the one that was taking Fiona's power away from her was her own daughter. We see Madison storming off after she can't pass one of the tests. Kyle goes and kills her, strangles her right there for not being able to resurrect Zoe. This is where the main story ends, and we get to see a series of epilogues after this. So we see about a month after she becomes Supreme, she goes public and she gives an interview to the news in which she claims that they're not evil witches and they're just looking to expand their school because their numbers are dwindling and they need fresh meat on the roster, perhaps. Then we see a scene where Myrtle basically begs Cordelia to burn her at the stake for killing the other members of the council. And Cordelia's like, I'm not gonna kill my aunt after I've already lost so many people. So the next day, December 21st, we see Miss Girl yet again being burnt at the stake, and we get the iconic Balenciaga line.
Any last words?
Only one.
That's history right there. December 22nd, 2013. We see Cordelia opening the doors to all the witches that are coming in. There's actually like hundreds. And we see that Zoe and Queenie have become like her new council. And in this final scene, we get Cordelia hearing something. So she goes into the other room and finds out her mother has returned and was never dead all along, actually. She planted a fake memory in the Axeman's head that he killed Fiona. Fiona faked her death, has returned now to figure out who the new Supreme was. Boy, was she in for a shocker when she realized that it was her own daughter, and she can't kill her now. And Miss Girl is bald, by the way. Like, she's about to croak, perhaps. She is on her last legs. This scene is so good. Like, it's beyond just camp and funny. Like, the writing, the acting, it's so stellar. This is basically Fiona's final goodbye to Cordelia. She's begging Cordelia to take her life. She's too much of a coward to do it herself, I guess. Cordelia's like, I'm not gonna give you mercy because you didn't give me mercy your entire life, bitch. So Miss Girl watches her mother die. The last scene is Cordelia opening the doors for all the witches that walk in. Fiona ends up in her personal hell with the Axeman. That basically ends the story of Coven. We have come to the final ranking of the characters that are in the finale. Obviously, 4 of them are not on here. Spalding, Marie Laveau, Madame Delphine Lalaurie, and Nan, who previously died. They are not in this episode. Basically, not much changed from the last episode. The only differences are, I believe, Myrtle was right here, Cordelia was right here, and Fiona was at the top. Much like the story of the season and the actual character of Cordelia, she's always just right underneath the very top. This is the first episode where she is on top. She is the star of the episode. Obviously, she is the next Supreme. She finally gets her top spot. This is the final ranking of all the characters. This brings me to the very end of the Coven episode. I certainly had a lot of fun. I think bringing in the Abby Lee pyramid was quite an inventive way to make sure that this series didn't get stale. I'm going to probably not use it again, at least for a few seasons, only when it makes sense. But I think for Freak Show, I'm going to return to the normal setup where I just have all the characters on the board at once and they stay in their same places. Even though I used so much of the board for timeline, I feel it's definitely way more character driven than it is actually story based. I think they really accomplished something here that's iconic, and you can't deny how good the characters are in this season. Like, this is the best cast, argue with the wall. Yeah, that is a wrap on Coven. I'm gonna get working on Freak Show, and hopefully I should have them out on Halloween. Anyway, bye!